Hey everyone, Butlee here. I'm with Patch. How are you doing, Patch?
I'm good. How are you?
We really need to work on this intro. I feel like "how you doing" is really like bogan Aussie.
How you doing?
But how do I introduce you and give you a cue to talk? This is what happens when you don't sit next to the person you're casting. Anyway, we'll work on that as we improve. This is obviously us learning how to do the vid arenas on the YouTube arenas and things like that. So, episode 30. 30 episodes. You'll be happy to know that episode 30 is the not significant episode milestone. We are going to, as you saw last time, we checked out how the Wildwood works. Remember, we took that weak team to try and raise the levels of some of our lower characters, and they got absolutely smashed, and we had to abort and run back to the entrance. This episode, there's a few episodes coming up, and it's not grinding so much, but it's going to be us working through the Wildwood, get to see some of the different lands that they have there, lands, terrain, maps, whatever. And we're going to use a few different characters and start wiggling our team around. Basically, we're just sort of rounding everyone out a bit, because the way I was explaining it to Patch off stream, off video, off recording, is we did, since we were at the port at the start of chapter 2, we went battle, all the way fighting, and we met Vice, did some more fights, and then we went full story for like 10 episodes. We tried to go sailing down south and then up the coast, and we got to, oh, crikey, what's the town? Rhyme? Was it Rhyme? Yeah, it was Rhyme. And then, no, it wasn't Rhyme. Rhyme's where the main castle is.
Crikey. Do you even realise that?
What's wrong with crikey?
Nothing. You've just been very Australian today. I'm liking it.
I'm a really weird mix of a poorly spoken posh Englishman and a really bogan spoken Australian. Anyway, point being, so we went back down the coast and blah blah blah. Point is, a lot of story to finish off the chapter. Now we've started chapter 3, and I felt like we should have some time just to do some fighting and not grind levels, but start actually looking at our characters a bit more. Start like planning our journey, because obviously when we get going again, it's going to be a furious, not the right word, a frantic mix of story and fighting at the same time. So we're going to have a few episodes where we start like posturing the team, making sure the levels are sort of unique or adjoined, like similar, and leveling up some of the weaker classes so we can get some new characters in and have a bit of fun with some of the new things new characters and classes can do.
Yeah, so we're going to be grinding.
It's grinding, but hopefully it's interesting enough. Like, I don't know, it's just sort of the thing to have on in the background, watch us grind and watch what's going on. I don't know, I still enjoy playing the grinding in this. That's the difference, right? In a lot of games, I'm trying to distinguish this game from grinding in a normal game, because normally it's boring and you're like, oh, I'm doing the same thing over and over. This is still fun, complex battles.
Someday we should talk about mechanical depth and what it is and what it means. Maybe not this video, maybe the next one, when I've had time to sit down and write some notes. But I think we should have a talk about mechanical depth.
I can't believe you're planning what we're talking about. I'm shaking my head, no one can see that. I'm shaking my head
you saying
in disappointment.
That all of our discussions are impromptu, completely unplanned, and off script?
I am so bad at this whole recording thing that I literally do not alt-tab off the thing on my main screen while I'm recording it. So if I wrote notes, I wouldn't be able to see them. Alright, so we pick a team. The point of this... Okay, that was what I was getting to. Of the next few episodes, this one is about topping up all of the classes to be around the same level. I know what fight's coming up. I know where they're going to be. It's like our Valkyries level 12. And I'm just trying to make sure we get like our wizards and our clerics and our knights are all up to sort of level 12, and we're going to plateau there a bit. So that episode's going to be a couple of quick battles to just top these guys up. So we're using some of our main cast for this one. We change it around next time though. Just going through our roster of like 20 odd people. In the meantime though, last time we were talking about Dragon Commander, so we're going to talk about that a bit more, round off that discussion to pass a bit of the time. And you know, it's an interesting game because it tried so much, and we like talking about game mechanics and sort of design choices.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out that was like, what, a ranged retaliation? That was hilarious.
It's pretty cool. I haven't actually got the counter-attack ability on many characters, but I will. You get quite potent, like you start teaching your archers counter-attack. So they can't counter-attack magic, but they can counter-attack ranged attacks, so like... Oh, like, we've got a character with throwing ability, so it's like someone can hit him and he'll throw a dagger at them or an axe at them. So yeah, it gets pretty fun.
Alright, so do you want me to lead us in on Dragon Commander?
Yeah, right. I don't think we're going to talk about the battles much, guys. Nothing is new. I mean, it's still interesting in my opinion, because you get to see different terrains and different characters and different things, but we're not going to talk about the battles because you've seen all these tactics before. I basically just try and kite the big beasts away and stomp them with archery and magic, so...
I think the other thing is, it's a very story-driven game. When the story isn't happening, there's not really that much to talk about. Like, you can talk about strategies, but yeah, there's not that much to say.
Right, and I should be clear that you don't have to do this if you're playing along, and it's probably only because I changed a few of the classes really on in the piece. Like, we've changed class a few times now and stuff like that, and I have been trying to use a certain roster of characters, so we're just sort of like a level shy of where you would be. If you just want to play straight through the story and use a smaller team, you'll probably find that you can keep up with the story without ever having to grind. So we're doing a little bit of grinding to make up for me being a bit fanciful in how I told the story. Alright, anyway, onwards, Dragon Commander, as we missed the goddamn Griffin. Rah!
So, we talked about Dragon Commander last time. The things we mentioned was that there were 3 real aspects to the game. There is the Total War style management, where you look at your kingdom, it's all different territories, and you manage those territories. You know, you hire troops at some, you build buildings, and you're just trying to conquer area. Then the next aspect is, I guess, the choice-oriented RPG aspect, where throughout the game experience, you are asked to make decisions, such as legalizing drugs, or how you treat, I don't know, education, and things like that.
And when we say RPG, this is actually more the roleplay element and less the stat grinding element of an RPG. When you say RPG these days, that's what people think.
Yeah, well, I've always felt an RPG is more about decision making. However, I do agree that character building is very important. Like, role playing to me has always been character building, and character building typically involves stats and items and things like that. But it is also the choices. So,
right,
you know,
it's
just one aspect. Yeah. Anyway, not to dwell on that. And then the last part is the RTS aspect, the actual battles itself. And the reason I introduce it in this order is because of the 3 of them, the Total War, management, positioning troops, training guys, upgrading your army, unlocking new things, that's actually the best part of the game. It's a lot of fun.
I think that's the part that feels, it functionally works, it just doesn't have enough. It's the one part that leaves you more wanting, if you know what I mean. I want this, but I want it to have more units and more variety and more things.
And then the next part is, and it's also the part that doesn't really rely on the other 2 aspects as much. It's more like the framework, and everything else goes into it rather than the other way around. Right. And then the next part is the choices decision RPG gameplay. The reason I bring that up second is because there's not that much to say about it, but it's pretty straightforward. It's choices don't matter. Your decision making is really kind of irrelevant. You can choose, you know, to legalize drugs or not, and all that happens is different populations in the game like you more or less. So you might lose a little bit of gold, but overall, so long as you're not making everyone hate you, and that's very hard to do, then you will generally always be making enough money to win, even on the harder difficulties.
It's a tough one because I find, apart from like it's trying to have a, I guess, a snowball-y nature, and it doesn't really succeed, but
no.
apart from that, there's no real rush to get anywhere.
No, there isn't.
So you never have to, like, your choices are all just sort of A or B.
Yeah, all very binary.
That's what we're talking about, right? The RPG choices, yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason, like, they don't really impact is because you never feel pressured to make a choice. You always have time to go this or that or whatever. Like, and if you were making choices, like if you were trying to get say get more money versus get more troops, well, that doesn't really happen. And it also doesn't help that it's not time sensitive. So if you need troops right now, you might make a compromising choice to do that, to be ready for the next fight. Because there's no pressure on the battle, that choice doesn't matter. And I guess what I'm saying is that's this is so far away from where you want it to be as a system. That's the next couple of steps that need to be in place for it.
Something I have to say about it is it reminds me of something I've said in the past, in that it's trying to be a game and not a simulation. If it was trying to be a more realistic simulation, you might have other aspects that your choices could influence. Say, a nation's productivity, like a single tile's productivity, depends on, that's how well they can produce troops or something. Or, just to use an example you would know, maybe not the audience, but you, Butlee, manpower in EU4, say if you use drugs, you legalize drugs, you couldn't get as much manpower.
Right.
That would be an impact, but there's no foundation for this game to support that. The only thing that is in the game is money, and that doesn't matter as much. Like that's really not high impact in the scheme of things.
You said EU4. I would actually use Crusader Kings 2 as a better example in terms of troops. I think
perfect.
It's kind of just it's not quite right. I don't think it's quite balanced perfectly, but there's a good little line between like where you invest your money, day-to-day stuff. Do you sort of not have as many troops and save your money so you can get mercs, but like even just building buildings, like when you build a training camp, you only get so many extra troops, but I find that becomes kind of significant, and I find it's a good little choice between that, and you slowly sort of customize your army and things like that. I feel like CK2 gets that kind of right, and obviously Dragon Commander doesn't have any of that kind of element. That's what you're trying to say.
Well, it does in the Total War aspect, where how you choose to spend your money is very good. It's very well designed. You do choose between, do you want to get dragon powers, or do you want to get research? Do you want to unlock more troops? Do you want to buy more troops? Do you want to build more buildings? And that's good, but the RPG choices don't influence that basically at all.
And money also isn't influenced by, not really. Like, you just sort of get money and you build improvements, whereas in CK2, the whole buildings versus money versus troops versus ability to go to war, it's tightly knit, in my opinion. Whereas here, they're so separate. You just sort of how much money you get isn't dependent on how much war you're fighting or how many troops you have. There's no like maintenance costs. If you're at combat, in CK2, it's like if you're at war, it's expensive because you have to re-levy your troops. You have to pay levies. You have to hire mercs, and it's all cyclic then, because then you don't have the money to invest into the buildings to get more troops. And so I agree, the choices don't mean anything, and the individual features that build the game, the resources like money and troops and things like that, they don't have they're not linked together enough to be significant in Dragon Commander.
No. And with that being said, that brings us to our final part of this revision, and that's the RTS. It's not very good. If you've played an RTS game, you'll know there's certain things that you want out of a game, and that's, you want responsive controls, you want typically you want to be able to build a base, you want to be able to reinforce your troops and stuff. Dragon Commander plays out a little bit more like a tactical game. There are fixed base structures that you can capture. There's no sort of base building outside of that. You can't place buildings where you want. Then you can train troops, but you have a limited amount of resource that slowly drains. And when that resource reaches zero, you've lost the battle.
Can you change that resource, or is it purely based on how much troops you take into the fight? Isn't that the gimmick?
It's a couple of things. It's like I can't remember specifically. There's a few things that influence it. It's like I think you get a slight benefit if it's home territory. If you've got more troops brought to the battle, then you get more of it.
Limits higher, so yeah, it doesn't instantly win. It just means you have the greater way to dodge attrition, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is if you go in with a very tiny amount of troops, you basically can't win the battle because your opponent can just Zerg rush you and you'll run out of forces.
Yeah,
and
he will eventually beat you.
Yeah. The other thing is, in RTS, you can turn into a dragon and fly around and shoot fire and cast spells, and that sounds really cool, but if you've ever played an RTS, you would know being in the third person is not a good way to control armies and build troops. And I think this is what's actually really damaged the game, is they tried to make it so you could turn into a dragon and control armies. And they've gone, well, we need to make controlling armies really simple. You can't have base building in that if you're controlling a dragon.
Right.
So it'll just be fixed structures, and you can hotkey them and spam build orders and things like that. And so it really just quite bad.
Oh, I get you. I've
is
seen
fun.
similar things. I don't think you've played it, but Mount and Blade is a series, and I think they're actually making a second one, although it's been in production for a while. It's another Paradox game, I believe, actually. It has, so you're like a soldier in the olden days, and you lead a general, you lead your army, or you build up your army, and you so it's like you get into battle and you're in third person, you're managing you because you're still you, and you have like tactical commands, but the fights are still kind of managed scrappily, and it's all AI done, and you can tell like your troops like stay in a group or just go all out or charge or move to this position. But in that game you sort of do it a little bit, but then the fight breaks out and you don't, and it's like you say, it's because you can't manage a fight very well when you're in third person.
Not at all, no.
And I've never seen a system that really could. That's the thing.
Yeah, it becomes quite impractical. It's really to a detriment. And I wouldn't say I'm disappointed, but I think it would have been a better game if they'd kept aspects of base building, if they'd kept, traditional RTS mechanics and done away with the dragon thing. The dragon thing is cool, but not necessary. Alternatively, one of the mechanics they could have used is you could have had a general who does all the RTS stuff for you and let the player play as a dragon always. But they didn't do that.
I would have happily, and that's kind of my point with Mount and Blade. I would have been happy if they were just like, you're a dragon, and maybe you have the ability to be one like general unit or the dragon, and in case you get sick of flying around and you actually want to go and stab someone in the chest. And like the fight just happens. The problem is you have to sort of step back and you have to train units, and then you have to move units. If it was just like, this is where I'm struggling. So I know there are games that say your old Aeon of Strife maps, like custom maps and stuff like that. Those games, and the bit I'm talking about is the fact that you have minions at either end of the battle, and they just charge head on and keep fighting indefinitely.
Yeah.
And if you had that sort of setup happening, and how many of those came out were based on what you sent in and what types of units you'd customized for your army, and you didn't have to manage that side of it, that would be a fine environment to then let you fly around and fight enemy generals. Like Dynasty Warriors you like playing, right?
Oh yeah.
Kind of like that. You have just a general number of fodder troops, and they fight, and that's based upon things prior to the battle, and that's cool. And then the only difference being... Sorry, are we going to cut in there?
If the game had combat like Dynasty Warriors, except you're a dragon, I would have fell in love with it. This would have been like the perfect game for me, to be honest. Well, it would have been everything
just the idea of like, there are so many mooks, and it's up to you. You can spend your whole time plowing through the mooks to try and cut their numbers down, or you can go target generals, or... And if you could do that, and you could choose between managing a general or a dragon, this game would be fine. Like, you don't need... Then you would say, oh, but it's not an RTS anymore. It's like, well, no, it's not, but was the RTS adding anything? Not really.
Yeah, here's the thing. A good game is always going to be better than a bad game of a specific genre. Even if you love RTS, there's a good chance you will like a good game more than you like a bad RTS.
Right.
Just because a good game is universal most times.
No, I agree. And we're just trying to say, like, so the game kind of didn't get the RTS right, and hopefully we pointed out a few reasons why we think that. Now we're just sort of saying you need to probably get away from... sorry. What we're saying is you need to sort of, like, cut the RTS element out. You need to say, look, we can't do every genre. We need to get better in the genres we're in instead of trying to do everything. And I think that's a good explanation of the whole game, right?
Yep.
The game is trying to be... I mean, we've mentioned the three main ones, but it's trying to have elements of all sorts, you know? It plays out almost like a interactive story in the sense of the way that the RPG choices are very much just conversation, pick a choice, you know? And so it's trying to have like extra elements or extra genres built into the game, and that was its big selling point at the time, I believe. And it needed to probably step away from saying, oh, I can do this, I can do that, I want to do all of these 4 or 5 different genres, and just pick like 2 or 3 and do them better. And that's where it never really got going.
It was the old, you can do anything claim, and then when you get into the game, you can't do anything.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, master of none. I did have... So, let's talk about the negatives. Do you feel like we've properly covered the negatives?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about positives, because I always said if they could make a second one of this, with this sort of knowledge that we're talking about in mind, this could be a great game.
Actually, there is one last negative I'd like to bring up, and that is, once you've played through the game once, you have pretty much seen every choice. Not absolutely every choice, but you've seen the majority. So each time you play after that, you're going to be doing the same things. You're going to see drugs come up. You're going to see, you know, stuff like that is going to come up.
There's no, like, tree of events, like...
No.
I made this choice, therefore I see
wife.
a different set of choices later. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, scumbag. I left my little Terror Knight up there just to finish him off. Now I have to send someone else up there to deal with it.
So, good things. The first good thing, I would say, and probably one of the reasons I kept coming back to the game out of frustration, was I actually thought the RTS had a really good foundation. The units, their upgrades, the progression of the RTS, all of it was very interesting. Your most basic unit, for example, is a trooper, and troopers are weak. They're very short range. They're not melee. There's no real melee in this game. Right. They're very short range. They die very quickly. So the main thing is you can build lots of them. However, you can buy 2 upgrades for them. The first upgrade is the ability to capture buildings, enemy buildings, and the second option, the second upgrade, is to go as a suicide attack. So suddenly this early game weak unit that hasn't really got relevance later on has these abilities that actually make them still kind of relevant and interesting to keep in your army. And the game in that regard is actually very well designed. So many of the units you look at and you go, oh wow, this has a purpose. And it's difficult to find a unit that doesn't. Basically every unit is very well designed.
Right.
It's just the RTS aspect of the game, the actual playing of it, the controls and so on, is so bad that you don't get to enjoy it as much.
Well, you kind of ask yourself, like, you got to go back to saying, well, is it fun? And I find the RTS aspect of it kind of fun. Like, all the units have goofy quotes. Like, it definitely fits the tone of the game. You know, that element, yeah, fine. Really, really can get on board with that. I'm okay with that. It has fun elements in the game. It just, the gameplay itself is really lacking, unfortunately.
Yeah. The other, so I could go on about the RTS aspect for ages. This features so many good decisions. The other one I wanted to say was, your transport ships, they can attack air. I don't think they can attack ground. Maybe they can, but I don't think they can. They might be able to attack other boats. They can attack air. Very weak attack, but they can. And they also get a cloak ability. And I have won a map in the past just because I had a cloak ability. And the AI sent an air unit. And I just cloaked my boat and slowly picked it off. And it was great. I was so happy because I invested in an upgrade that I didn't think I was really going to use, and it ended up paying off.
You found a use for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to boast about that.
No, that's right, and that's what I mean. The game has fun elements, just it's not quite rounded enough to make use of them all.
So, the other... So I've already said I really like the management side of it. The choosing upgrades, buying troops, managing your kingdom, that stuff. I actually really like that. But I will also say that in the RPG mechanics, one of the major parts of the games that you could say is done pretty well is the wife system. As a dragon commander, you are, inherent king to the world.
Right, and it's meant to be old-fashioned, and so you have families providing suitors to be your queen, sort of thing.
Yeah, you pick one of 4 wives: a dwarf, an elf, a lizard, or an undead. Who is a skeleton. She's actually an actual skeleton. And each of these do have their own personal path. The skeleton lady is probably one of the most notable. Depending on what you choose, and this is spoilers, so sorry. Depending on what you choose, she can end up as a human, she can end up as like a golden skeleton, she can end up basically the same as she is. There's different options, I think the last one is she can turn into like a Frankenstein monster. And you can choose how this works out. It's all based on what you decide, and depending on what you've decided, something interesting and different can come out of it. The main issue is, again, that this doesn't end up influencing the overall gameplay.
Right, it's like everything, right? It's fun in the sense of it's interesting and it's fun to do, but the fact that it's not tied together takes away from the experience.
Yeah. So, did you want to talk about what they could improve on?
Well, I was just going to say, I find like the choices are actually, apart from not influencing everything, the choices are actually not too bad in the sense of moral and ethical standpoint.
Sure.
If you were creating a story and it was like your legacy of, I don't know, what type of ruler you are based on the choices, it would really work out well. The game kind of lets itself down there by not making that a thing, but
it's very even-handed.
Well, it's good,
because it's got 5 different people who respond to all your decisions. If you choose one thing over the other, you don't feel like there was a bias that went into it. That went, the developer was putting their opinions into the game. It definitely comes down to the characters' opinions. You don't feel like, some sort of a message is being sent.
Oh yeah. I know, I thought it was good. I mean, you can argue that all the characters are a bit, I guess, tropey, but I think that's the point. You gotta remember, the game is supposed to be like a slice of life thing, even though it's, you're a king and stuff, so there's gonna be elements of, not goofiness, but yeah, just general jokes and trying to be a bit more fun, a bit sporty. So I don't mind that the characters are all... They're not... I wouldn't even say they're one note. I'm talking mostly about the wives, and you have ambassadors as well for the different races. They're a little one note, but they still have to take a stance on the issues, so you don't notice as much that they're one note kind of things, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense to everyone out there. So yeah, I don't mind that either. I don't know. What sort of improvements you got? We got a couple more minutes, so you run through
obviously
that.
The first one would be have different units for your RPG choices. Like, have your RPG choices influence the people, sure, but then make it so that those, whether people like you or not, opens up different options. Sometimes imbalance is fun, so having something like a really big, powerful unit that is not very balanced could still be really cool. Say you get 100% approval with imps, and like you unlock like this big, ridiculous mech-looking thing that stomps around and has 1 million guns, and it's really expensive to build, but it's really cool and fun to have, and you can only have one of them. And that's because you've got 100% relations with the imps. That'd be a really cool aspect. Or even on a smaller scale, the imps like you, so you get access to a new troop. The undead like you, so you get like a skeleton army, or even like a replacement for the trooper that is an undead unit, that does similar things but has its own abilities on top of what it has.
I was so angry at this exact moment because I obviously was trying to recruit the new swordsmaster that we've never seen before. I was so angry.
And she died.
Right, and so what we're saying is, like, you make all these RPG or story element choices. It would be cool if you could then somehow get something in the other parts of the game, say the RTS or say the grand strategy map, get some things that kick out of that, and you don't. It basically just turns into like power / money, and they're so, like I said, they're so not related that it doesn't matter. That's the main thing. I don't know, like, there's lots of little things, but that's the main thing, is that you need all the different elements of the game to link together, and they don't, and that's where it really falls over.
Make them matter. That's what you really need to do, is make them matter.
Right, if I'm sweet talking the skeletons to get this massive skeleton...
Why is she trying to desert?
She's angry that we rejoined with Leonard and the Wallace stuff.
Yeah, but didn't she already complain about that?
I guess she never got better. I guess we were on a timer to try and impress her.
Oh.
I have no idea how that works. I don't know if, like, she told us and we got like a time limit where she was definitely leaving, like, and we couldn't save her, and this was like a warning. You better get some coverage for ourselves. I don't know if that's how it works, or if it's like, cracking, or if I had a chance to do something better, or talk to her, or change something, or I don't know.
Jeez, another person we have to kill.
Yeah, she'll be back later, you watch. Anyway, that's about all for the episode. We probably could do a bit more on Dragon Commander. We got another episode. We're obviously digging more into the rest of the Wildwood. We will be back in the 31st episode. Well, episode 31. It's not the 31st episode per se. And thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you next time. See you guys later.
See yous.